What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Against the Flow podcast. This is a podcast for music producers, artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, and anyone doing anything extraordinary in life. And today we have a very special guest. He goes by the name of Valera, and we're going to talk about some great things today. So without further ado, let's get into another episode of Against the Flow. All right, so we are live with the 29th episode of Against the Flow podcast with my very, very special guest, Valera. How you doing, man?
What's going on, guys? Yo, I'm chilling, man. Chilling like a villain, man.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm pretty sure you have a lot to talk about and a lot that we can talk about today.
Yeah, man. Definitely excited to talk about music, talk about whatever.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
All right, so to start off, why don't you give like a brief introduction, just about yourself, your journey, how you got started with music for those who don't know who you are.
Yeah, for sure, man. So yeah, I'm Valera. First name's Alex. You can just call me Alex. So I actually started making beats like a long time ago. I was like in sixth grade or something, and I downloaded this really shitty software called like Music Masterworks or something. I was in like band at the time, like, a concert band or wind ensemble, like in middle school. And so I was like making beats like I was Timbaland, or like I was, like I was Kanye West. Like those were like my inspirations. Definitely like Pharrell and stuff. So that kind of stuff is where I started. As I got older, I definitely started making more EDM. Uh, Dubstep, trap, that kind of stuff. And I definitely DJ'd in college, and I did a bunch of remix competitions and, stuff like that. But, then it kind of gets tiring after a while making really hype music, I guess. Maybe that was because that was my personality at the time, to make, really bass heavy kind of stuff. And so, for the past like a year or so, I've really transitioned and kind of rebranded myself into be more more melodic, more definitely more low fidelity, more acoustic, like acoustic guitar and electric guitar back there, and just also using my voice. So it's definitely been interesting, a very jarring transition, definitely. But yeah, that's where I started, and that's where I am now, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting that you allow yourself to grow with your music. Like the kind of music that you produce, and it is pretty fun, like producing multiple genres or producing another genre that you're not really um, comfortable producing. And it's pretty cool that you made that transition and you allowed yourself to make that kind of music, because I feel like a lot of people they grow a
Mhm.
fan base from one genre or like some type of unique sound or whatever, and
Yeah.
they're scared of going away from that, scared
Mhm.
of losing that fan base. But I think it's cool that you allowed yourself to make a different type of genre because that's who you are.
That's exactly it. I mean, I definitely was afraid to make that jump because I didn't want people to be like, like, what is this? Like, where's the drop? Like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But and then I definitely tried to dabble more into like, oh, like maybe I can like do a little bit of bass music, but also a little bit of melodic stuff, and kind of just be in between those things. But then I was like, who am I catering towards? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like forgetting like how I really feel. I would rather just make this type of music that I'm making right now. Like I have to do it for me, basically. Like I appreciate like everyone that listens to me, but if I feel like fake about it in any way, then it definitely feels wrong. So, like I'm sure every artist wants to be genuine, authentic, kind of like what you were saying, like that's just how I feel now, like growing into that. And so I didn't want to have like one foot in and one foot out. I wanted to be like both feet planted, um, just like making the music I am now. So yeah.
Hmm. So do you think that you would like ever go back to making like bass music, or are you like stopping that completely?
That is a good question. I know artists make other personas, they go by different names for different genres and stuff. But I've started thinking like a little bit differently and was just like, if I ever wanted to go back to making bass music, then I would just do it under the same name. And, that probably from a marketing perspective is super weird. But I was just thinking, like, what is really stopping us though from doing it? And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But at least try it out. You know what I mean? Um, there's nothing really, painful about it. You're gonna make yourself happy, and I feel like if you already have that fan base that kind of gets you, like, I'm gonna take like Skrillex for example, who makes a ton of. Obviously, he started off with a ton of bass music, dubstep, and stuff like that and then he kind of transitioned to like dude, I don't even know what he kind of makes right now. It's like kind of like pop a little bit and still kind of like trap elements, but he's not afraid to just go off and then do some other thing. And that's fine because he has that fan base that's kind of like, I get it, this is you. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. But no plans yet to make some like, well, maybe I'll make like a crazy trap remix or something in the future, but right now, no plans for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy because I have that same, I guess that same vision because I started out making EDM,
Yeah,
and as a lately I've starting to get into trap beats, like hip hop beats where it's more sample based, and that's taught me how to flip samples,
yeah,
how to focus on my drums more.
yeah,
It's not like EDM where it's like four on the floor.
yeah,
If you produce like house or progressive house or whatever.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I feel like I want that same thing where when I build my brand, from a marketing perspective, it doesn't really make sense to, make random genres of music, but I want to be able to build a brand where if they see my name on, SoundCloud or Spotify, they'll listen to my track because they like me as a brand and as a person. You know,
Right.
it's exactly how you describe Skrillex, where if you see Skrillex featuring anybody or on anything, as a fan of Skrillex, you'll most likely click on it,
Hmm.
and that won't guarantee that you'll like the track, but it still makes you feel like, this track isn't for me, but he
Hmm.
still has a lot of tracks that I personally love, you know,
Hmm.
and and I feel the same way about Marshmello too. He
Oh
started
yeah.
out as EDM, and then now he's just, doing everything. Even he's in the gaming industry,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's just like being versatile with like not just your music but everything you're doing. That I feel like that is what really makes you unique as a person, as a brand, and as a producer.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely, 100%. And I think like, we talk about like going in between genres and making a lot of genres, but there's definitely that notion of like being genreless that I think people are trying to push now too, which is kind of like effectively the same thing, doing multiple genres or doing every genre in like a song or an album. That would be like genreless. And I think that I've been seeing so much of it lately, and I think I like that about music, especially in the electronic world. Like, I feel like if you went back in like the '90s and were like, "Yo, let's listen to some electronic music," people would kind of have an idea of a preconceived notion. But I feel like if you said it today, at least to someone that actually listens to electronic music, you'd be like, you really wouldn't know what it would sound like in the end. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool that people aren't afraid to express themselves. And like another example is Getter. You know Getter? He's this dubstep producer.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he's like, I don't even know what he makes now. Like it's just like super like weird kind of hip. I mean, he raps too, and then he has this other thing where he does like experimental kind of music. And so that makes me excited for people, and I hope that like me and you would do the same thing for ourselves as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's funny that you mentioned Getter because back when he was coming up and making dubstep, and and
Yeah.
trap, I really wasn't into him. But the
Mm.
moment I listened to his Visceral album, I
Yeah.
was hooked. And the crazy thing was he got canceled or like outed for, that album. But to me, it's like that is a like a genuine piece of work. And I can see why people and producers, artists get scared of
Yeah.
making something that genuinely resonates with them, because not everyone will see or resonate with your vision or that
Yeah.
message. But I think the important thing is to realize that a lot of people do, even though there's a lot of people that don't. Even though there's a select few that do, I think those select few makes it worth it.
Is it worth it? Exactly. Yeah. Dude, I totally agree. Like, I actually forgot that it was met with such, it was controversial, like kind of like what you were saying. And yeah, no, you're definitely right. I think at the time I was like, oh, this Getter guy, I already kind of know what it's gonna sound like because I thought that he just made the same like dubstep. But that album freaking blew my mind, and it made me sad that some people didn't like it, like the people that had that preconceived notion. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy he did. You know what I mean? I'm happy that artists are willing to make that jump. And it gets boring, at least for me too. Like, it gets boring if one of your favorite artists keeps making the same thing over and over again. I've had this rant so many times, but I get it. Like, if you want to like kind of keep on building that same, kind of play it safe. But I love artists that take freaking crazy leaps and still figure it out. I'm a huge like Kanye stan, so I feel like he tends to do that where he'll just like make an album people will love and then make an album that people will be like, what the hell is this? It's pretty prevalent in the rap world, I would say. Well, like Mac Miller, rest in peace. Like, he's another guy who just like comes out like, oh, like he started with like that college rap shit, and then by the end he was making like some really soulful stuff. So just like beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like, even as a fan and
Yeah.
as a person that consumes a lot of music, I think it's important to respect the artist that you're listening to. Like, it's like we said in the beginning, we're allowed to grow with our music, because it's like if you start out when you were making music, like if you started out making music like when you were like 13, 14,
Yeah.
there's a small chance you'll be producing the same thing when you're like 24 or 25.
Yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
like you go through things through life, and you should be able to grow with your music. And
Mm.
seeing that from, like as an artist myself, when I see artists do extraordinary things, like just, like offbeat or just like unique or weird, I'm more attracted to that than people
Yeah,
that, play it safe, like you said.
yeah, yeah, definitely, man. Definitely agree.
So let's talk about your EP that you just released. What inspired that EP?
Man, so like let me backtrack a little bit because right before the EP, the last thing that I put out was a song called "Back to You," and it was kind of my first like foray into like adding acoustic guitar and my vocals, and that song was still very much EDM, I want to say. But that at the time that came out, I was in that conundrum that I was describing earlier, where I had one foot in and one foot out. At the time, I was really much into like lo-fi music, and I thought that this song or like what this energy is bringing is just not the energy in me. I wasn't I wasn't I wouldn't say I was sad or anything like that at the time, but definitely in a lot of thought. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
especially with how the world is, it just kind of like puts you into a different kind of space, mentally. And I thought, I started like like I grabbed my acoustic guitar and I would just play really simple chords and just like hum over it. And so a lot of the there's only 3 tracks, but all those tracks on Better, the EP, have that kind of simplicity to it. And I thought that, I don't have to, I don't have to add like, oh, all these soft synths or all these effects, like crazy risers, like hard 808. I don't need to do any of that. I just need to like, and even the lyrics, like the lyrics are like, it'll be like one sentence or one mantra, if you will, just over and over again.
Hmm.
And I feel like those kind of things are like, they kind of evoke like a weird kind of trippiness in the listener, or at least I hope to. So that's kind of where my head was at, and I'm pretty happy with the execution, and I'm hoping to definitely build upon it in a way that's still interesting, where I'm revisiting the same kind of themes, but hopefully in a, just in a different way, kind of like we were saying, just always trying to tweak it a little bit. So someone listening is not just like, oh, it's this again. You know what I mean? Just always trying to tweak, but still like um, real to yourself.
Hmm. So, your tracks got on a few playlists on Spotify. Like I've seen multiple playlist curators add your tracks to their playlist. So, like, how do you go about getting your tracks on those playlists? Like, did they find you? Like, did you reach out to them? Like, how did that work?
Um, well, first of all, like it's still crazy to me that that even happened. But yeah, so the song that I was pushing for my EP was the title track "Better," and pretty much I just submitted it to like a crap ton of like blogs and Spotify like playlisters and Instagrams like influencers and stuff like that. I used like Submit Hub. I also found like emails. I just like kind of just like I'm just gonna send it everywhere and see what happens. And I honestly didn't expect anyone to like. I mean, I expected them to be like, "Oh, this is pretty cool," but I was definitely not like, "Okay, like this is about to get added." I know that lots of people are gonna hear it, and I don't know, man. I was definitely just surprised with how everyone felt about it, and it's still being shared, like even today, in like different playlists, and it definitely blows my mind. So I'm hoping to, continue doing that with my music. So
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a solid EP. I've personally listened to it quite a few times, and
yeah.
it just
Thank
like never, like it just doesn't get tiring, Like it's just one of those things where EPs where I can have it on repeat, and it just like feel good music.
Yeah, I'm glad that you liked it. And another thing about just the EP is I feel like you can put it on like on repeat or just like listen to it like straight through one time because it's well one it's short, but it's short by design too. And like another thing that interests me is making music that's really good, but kind of leaves people wanting more. And this is actually a conversation I had with Cold Brew, who's another lo-fi producer. But definitely, like if albums are like 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 25 tracks or something like that, and they're each like 5-7 minutes long, I feel like nobody will remember the good songs in the track. You know what I mean? Or rather, they will only remember the good songs in the track, and you can only pick out like maybe like five. But what if you made that album just 5 songs? That would be a legendary album. You know what I mean? So I feel like
Hmm.
um, I think that's just like a great tip for like other producers. You know what I mean? You might have like the greatest like loop or the greatest hook or something, and you should really you shouldn't add stuff to it for the sake of adding stuff. You know what I mean? You want people to hear it immediately and be like, "Damn, that was hot." Then 2 minutes later, "Oh crap, it's done." Like I want to favorite this now. I want to be like, "Yo, peep this." Like I'm gonna send it to my boys or my friends or whatever. So I feel like um, and it's tough because lo-fi is all about having that really like awesome earworm that just like that you can like vibe to, but sometimes it just goes on for too long. And so if you producers keep it short, you know what I mean? Keep it short and sweet. And yeah, I mean that's something that I did with my EP. I don't think any of them are over like 3 minutes. I try to keep them like 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes. I have a single that's coming out that's literally like a minute 30 or something like that. Maybe I'm going too crazy with that one, but I feel like just keep it focused.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's many times where I've listened to music that, a track or two from that artist is like less than 2 minutes, 30 seconds. And it makes me want more of that song. And going back to that point where you said put out good music that you resonate with, and not just music that you think will just, like just for the sake of putting out music,
Yeah.
like it's like that first impression, because you never really know what song will reach that person, but if and when it does, you want them to, to be hooked onto your song, or hooked onto you immediately. And having that one song as an introduction, and then them going to your page, checking out your discography, and just seeing the music that you make and how good it is, how they resonate with it. And I feel like that's how you kind of get them to want more.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you make that earworm, you can really, like you're saying, really grab someone. It's a great hook to have. And yeah, they end up at your page, they end up at your Instagram. You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, and then if you're like you already have a bunch of content on your Instagram for people to go through and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all about creating that one hook. I think another thing about that, like hooking someone, hooking a listener, that I've definitely seen, is like if I scroll through Instagram and I see people posting their lo-fi beats and stuff like that, there are so many good people, but sometimes I'll go to one track and it'll be like 30 seconds of lead up before I guess like the main motif starts. And I feel like it's like a disservice to like how good the track is. So that just goes back to like really making good hooks for like the listener. Like people's attention spans are like, I mean, I thought my attention span was crazy. Like people's attention span is so like, so short. So you definitely have to be smart about it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. It just goes back to like, being true to yourself,
Mhm.
and really honing in on your craft, like really getting good at, because yeah, sure, like you can put out music, but if it's not good, and people keep seeing your name everywhere, then at that point, like you're just kind of, spammy. you know
Yeah, 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 definitely. Quality over quantity. I mean, I think there's like maybe an asterisk on that because you still have to pump out a lot of stuff, but definitely, yeah, definitely don't spend 30 seconds on it and just throw it on SoundCloud or on Spotify. Yeah, definitely still take the time to, you can make a crap ton of beats and music, but be picky about it because in the end of the day, that's going to represent you, or that's going to be what people think when they see your name. Exactly what you're saying. So.
Yeah. So, after, like getting on all these playlists, are you seeing any like new followers or fans that's like reaching out to you to, express their love for your music, or, just to say hello, or like how's that been for you?
Yeah, it was the first time ever that I got like a message or a few messages like on like the non-primary inbox on Instagram, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I was going through them and I was like, the people from even different like not from the US and stuff like that, which is where I'm based. So I would go through them and be like, somebody would be like, "Whoa, like I just heard your song on this playlist. Like, I really like it. Like keep." And it would just be a short sentence, and even just that would just blow my mind. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it just crazy me at the end of the day because like you're in your bedroom, you're like humming into your microphone. All of a sudden, someone in like Paris, like got your song on Spotify, and it's like, yo, this is tough. This is cool. And so it's just really humbling, I guess. It's really an interesting feeling,
hmm
gratification definitely, but it's just interesting that definitely in today's age, it could just be like that, like 1 second later, boom, like off in Asia or off in like Australia, like someone like really messes with it. So it's been fun, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Like I've definitely seen that with like, like my content, like I would just post something, and like they would just be people in my messages just saying like, hey, I love your stuff, just keep up the great work. It's like moments like that where like you're affecting people's lives, you're making their day or
Yeah.
inspiring them or whatever. It's like those little things that really helps you remember why you do what you do, and it's definitely really humbling.
Yeah, definitely. Like you're a part of like that person's like story. Not to be like cliche or whatever, but like that person's like waking up just like throwing on their song, going to work or something like that. And I think that's just like the craziest, mind blowing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's crazy how like you never know like how you impact their lives, but them reaching out to you, it tells you that you made their life better, in some way, shape, or form.
hmm Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it would take a lot for someone to do something like that. There's good people in the world, and I think that's really nice. Especially like people hitting me up who is a fairly small artist, and so it definitely feels nice and it feels encouraging. It feels like people are in a way saying like like don't give up, that kind of thing. And it's so like every little bit that's like that is really good to have, and it'll definitely keep small artists like me like going for like months and years and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of small artists, it is kind of crazy how a lot of small artists are usually the most talented.
yeah,
Like I've come across so many artists where they literally have like not even less than 1,000 followers, but like less than like 200.
yeah,
And I would check out their music, and it just blows my mind how amazingly talented they are.
yeah, yeah. There is so many good artists that are undiscovered, and it really makes you think. Like it gives you a different perception about the art scene, especially if you're just joining it or rejoining it after a while. You realize, wow, like there are some really talented folks that are making music, that are drawing, that are and they're just not famous. That's just all it is. You know what I mean? And it's really cool. I think I scroll through Instagram like I was saying, or I go on SoundCloud and I just scroll through stuff, and literally I'm always like maybe like 5 times out of like 10 minutes or something. I'm always like, oh my, ooh, like what is this? Like this is fire, and the person will have like 10 followers or something like that. You know what I mean? And so like that immediately goes in my library, and like I try to like if it's especially dope, I try to send it out and stuff because I feel like if you have music that's that good, you definitely as a fan, you definitely want to spread it to others. And so yeah, I mean, like I have so many friends too, and there's one thing about like having not a lot of fans, and it's that there's that level, but then there's people that don't even post their stuff at all that are amazing, and I have like a lot of friends that are like that. So there's definitely levels to it, and that's where kind of music marketing kind of takes you know artists to like a different level, I want to say, in terms of exposure. And it's a step that everyone wants to avoid. I want to say not everyone, but a lot of beginners, because it feels weird. It feels freaking weird. I'm not gonna lie. To promote yourself, especially if you're not used to it. It kind of feels like that feeling when you're sending out job applications and stuff, and you kind of have to talk yourself up and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It definitely has that feeling that you're selling something about yourself, or selling something you create, and it's not a natural feeling, and I get that. I truly get that, and I still feel that. But once you get over that hump, there's so many possibilities, and that's what I try to preach to artists that don't even post their stuff. And so like just like don't be afraid to put, I mean, like if you're just starting out, yeah, there's going to be some instances where your songs or your beats aren't as up to snuff as some of your peers or your favorite producers, and that's totally fine. That's part of being a beginner, to becoming intermediate, to becoming advanced and stuff. But just start, you know what I mean? Just post it. I remember the first time I sent a song that I did to one of my like just like my friends. Like these are my boys. I was like in high school, and they accused me of stealing the song. They were like, "Nah, you didn't make this. Like, how dare you?" And I was like, "Ah." So like, you know what I mean? Like really silly example, but like, yeah. Once you get over that hump, guys, like it's it'll feel good. It'll definitely feel good.
Yeah, I feel like that is the biggest struggle for beginners, just
Mhm.
just showing up every day, you know? Because like I'm pretty sure we've all faced times where we're just, staring at our doll and just sighing and
Yeah,
like that feeling, just
yeah,
sitting there like, okay, what's gonna happen today? Is it gonna be a good day, a bad day? But I think it's just so important to show up every day because
mhm,
just me showing up every day, whether I make like a bad beat today or like a good beat,
yeah,
I was still able to learn something. It doesn't have to be like this grand discovery,
yeah,
like, oh, I found a hidden gem that will blow me up or anything. It's just like learning about, like just learning something about your doll. Like, what does this effects plugin do? Like, let me
yeah,
try to find like a new VST just to play around with it. Like learn how to use that. It's
yeah.
just like those small things that people don't really take the time to appreciate, that really contributes to their success.
hmm Yeah, you definitely have to count those small victories. And I think that um, definitely what you were saying, there's this notion of a non zero day. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but if you treat every day as either a zero or a one, and a one is just like doing something. So it could be like you were saying, reorganizing something in your file structures in your DAW, or learning a little bit about a new VST, or learning some new chords on the guitar. That is a one. So as long as you keep having non-zero days, like a one, or maybe a day is like 10 because you did so many, you released an album, blah, blah. But as long as you do something, you're going to be so far ahead. The days are going to go by anyway. You might as well, do something during each of those days. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about those things, like when you practice guitar or practice piano or whatever, the thing about that is like an hour goes by really fast.
Yeah.
And
Oh, God, yeah.
and like if you do that every day, an hour may not seem a lot, but if you do practice piano for an hour a day, every day, that's 365 hours that you've put into practicing piano. And I think that's is so underrated and not talked about enough. Like, I guess, like, bottom line is like, if you're scared of doing something, that's the best time to start you know
Agreed. Definitely. Definitely agreed. Yeah, you should have. I think, yeah, like you're saying, it's very normal to have that feeling of being a little bit scared to try something different. And that was my feeling with my EP that's out. But yeah, it's very important to feel uncomfortable. Um, Getting out of your comfort zone is something that you should strive to do, whether it's in music or whether it's in anything else that you like to do. Because you stay in that comfort zone for too long, um, like let's say like years, you know what I mean? Like it's definitely going to be an unforgiving feeling when you look back and you realize, well, I didn't really put in as much effort as I could have. You know what I mean? I didn't really venture off. I kind of stayed to my path, and you're kind of stuck questioning yourself, like, like what if? You know what I mean? Like what if I didn't play it safe? You know what I mean?
hmm
So, and like what you were saying, like practicing piano like every day for like an hour, like even like in a week or even in a couple days, like that difference is already so noticeable. Remember when I was like first starting to learn guitar? Um, there's so many chords that just feel weird because your fingers just don't understand what's going on yet. And if you just practice it for like 30 minutes, like you come back like the next couple days, boom, you're playing it. So like if you just apply that to just all across the board, like with your music production, you're going to be far along. And I understand when people take those mental breaks because you definitely need to too. You don't want to overload yourself, you know what I mean? Because if you try to learn too much at once, you know, you might feel discouraged. Like, oh, I put in 10 hours today. This song doesn't sound great. You know, my voice is shot. Like, nothing's working. You know, you're gonna stress yourself out. You don't burn yourself out. Definitely don't want to do that. You definitely want to keep yourself positive. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, definitely listen to your tracks at the end of the day, and whether it's you know, whether it's something you're happy with or not, you can still say, oh, you know what, that's another track done though. You know, that's a non-zero day right there. Like, that's something that I just did. So it's, yeah, very important to keep on going. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yes, going back to like what you said, like being outside your comfort zone and being scared of releasing your EP. How did
Yeah.
you overcome that fear?
I don't even know, honestly. No, I'm just kidding. But I remember there was a period when I was trying to come up with a release date, even because I was like, you know, I was still like mastering the tracks, and then after a while, you get into, you know, if you're like me, you get into a little bit of analysis paralysis, and you're just kind of like, you know, this kick is off. I'm gonna change this kick, and then by the time you do that, your whole mix feels a little imbalanced. You say, okay, I'm gonna re-record the guitar. I'm gonna you know. And then after a moment, I realized, dude, I am not going to stop making these small changes. So what I did, just like a random day, I was like, boom, 2 weeks from now, like submit to distro, or rather, like today I'm gonna submit to distro court. 2 weeks from now, it's gonna be up. You know what I mean? And so it's making that leap, and then just kind of accepting that it's not going to be perfect. Nothing in life is perfect. Nothing you create is ever going to be perfect in your eyes. But recognizing the work you put into it. When I looked at my project files and I looked at, like, you know, all the timestamps and just all the effort that I put into like making those, you know, like with the lyrics and recording, I was just like, you know what? Yes, like this is the time to do it. Like, if I don't do it now, I might never put it out because I'm gonna keep changing little things here and there. And everyone tells me, as I'm sure people are telling you, or people are telling, you know, everyone else that are, you know, upcoming producers, put your shit out. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
it's yeah, definitely do not get caught up in over analyzing your stuff. Be proud of what you created. You know, it's okay to be a little bit of a perfectionist, but don't let it stunt your progress into just becoming just a bigger and better artist. And that literally applies to everything in life, but especially in the arts and music and stuff.
Yeah, that's so true. Like there's so many times, even now, like the songs that I've released, every time I listen to it, like it gets to that one part where you're like, I could have changed this right here, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it's just accepting, exactly like you said, like it's not gonna be perfect. And honestly, at the end of the day, if it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Like that's really like the bottom line of like making music, like sure there are rules of like how you should mix your songs, how you could master it, but honestly, at the end of the day, if it sounds good, it sounds good,
Yeah,
you
that
know.
that's huge. Like, and that was a huge reason. Like, if it sounds good, if it sounds good, then it sounds good. That was a huge reason of me putting out my EP in the state that it was, because I was actually like listening to the mixes again and being like, yo, I don't know any lo-fi songs that sound like the ones that I do. It sounds too weird. It sounds a little bit like too much off the top of, like, you know, like the high frequencies. There's like almost like no high frequencies. That's what it felt like listening to it. And I'm really glad that I just didn't listen to those like little concerns, because you're looking at, let's say, like you open up Spin and you're looking at the spectrum of your thing. And you're like, there's nothing here though. There's no energy in the high end, like, really. But then, you know, I just turned all that shit off and I was just like, wait, like, just like close your eyes and just really listen to it. And I was like, yeah, I think it sounds fine. I think it sounds great, actually. And so, yeah, I mean, you just have to yeah, not have those things hold you back. Like, oh, I didn't use, this reverb that everyone is using, or like I had like none of the cool plugins that people had when I was like making like bass music. And even now, like I'm using like all like the free plugins like Isotope Vinyl, and I just got like Tape Piano for like $15 or something like that. And like I still use Massive from when I like made bass music. So like you don't have to go out and buy like the brand new thing, or oh, with this new I don't know, if I had Ozone, then all my masters would be like top notch. Like that is the farthest from the truth, you know what I mean? And I feel bad because if you're a young or beginning producer, you'll kind of be like, oh, if I only had this, if I only had that. Like you could do anything you need to do with the stock plugins, in my opinion. So I use like FL Studio, and I honestly maybe have like 5 or 6 like installed plugins that are like new, that didn't come like stock, and I use like all of them all the time. So you definitely don't need like the brand, like the next new thing or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, because I feel like as a beginner, you look at all of these producers in like their giant studios and all this stuff, and then you think that you need all of those things. But honestly, like I've been producing for like 3.5 years. Like going back, if like with the knowledge I know now, if I could just go back and just work off of stock plugins, I think I could still make something really great.
100%, dude. Yeah, yeah, because that's exactly the same growth path that I see a lot of producers, including myself too. Like you'll bang it out with like the stock EQ and the stock compressor. Then you'll try it with this new like EQ and compressor, and then you'll realize, hold on, everything I'm doing here, I could literally still do with everything I had. And that's definitely a humbling experience because you realize like it's not about the tools, it's about how you use it. Definitely. There are people that are making shit with like GarageBand, you know what I mean? Which I would say doesn't have the same functionality as like Ableton or even FL Studio, I guess. Shout out to my GarageBand producers, but they're still making hot shit, you know what I mean? So if it works, and if it sounds good, then it sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I guess like going off of this, if like for anybody that is starting out producing, what's like one piece of advice that you would give them?
One piece of advice that I would give is, a lot of new producers, they try to emulate their favorite artist or something like that. I think that's how you really get into it. You say, like, take me for example, I love Timbaland beats. I'm gonna go hit the studio and make some Timbaland style beats. You know what I mean? And then you get pretty damn good at it. You know what I mean? But you shouldn't um, you shouldn't stunt your progress in any way by trying to stay in that realm. You know what I mean? And this goes back to our conversation on genreless, or being genreless. You should make the music you want to make, but don't let anything hold you back from doing something that you might think is a little bit different. You know what I mean? So let's say some kid was like, I love Marshmello. I'm going to make some mellow style, like drops and stuff like that. And then they'll be listening to it, and there'll be like a little voice in the back of their head and was like, hey, maybe you should like sing over this just like a little bit, or maybe you should switch out this bass, or rather like this bass synth, and just make it a little more mellow. You know what I mean? And I know so many producers that would never do that. They would be like, no, I'm going to stick with this because this is hot right now. This is going to pop off. This is what's in. Don't be afraid to do what's not in. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to go against that mainstream, because you think like, people won't like it or whatever. And this is like tying kind of everything we talked about, like staying genuine, staying genreless. Make things that you want to make and unapologetically do so. It's really, really important to do that. If you stay in that box, you're not going to forgive yourself years down the line. Promise you.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like So many of my tracks, I listen to a track and it's not that I copy it exactly the same, but what I do is like I structure it kind of the same. And then once I get like that foundation, then for me it becomes a what if game, you know? Like I see that they did this. What if I added like this reverb here? You know, like
Yeah,
what if I added a compressor before the reverb or after? Or you know, like it just becomes like an experiment to me. And to me, that's one of the most fun and exciting things because, you know, sure, like 9 times out of 10, I'm going to miss, you know, like it's not going to turn out great. But that one time, if I get it right, it makes me feel really good because I made something cool, something unique that makes me just feel happy inside, you know?
yeah, yeah. That those moments are priceless. Those moments are really moments that, when you're a producer, you're like, wow, like I'm right with those other guys that are making shit that I've never heard before. And the more that you put yourself into that space, the more that you're going to stay there, and the more that you feel like, oh, I can do anything, and you know, there's no rules that say that what I'm doing is illegal in the court of law of music. You know what I mean? So, um, and I mean, it's really good though I kind of what you're alluding to have that foundation of like, with music theory and I guess like different like patterns in music, I suppose. But once you know like the rules, like please break them. Please break every single one of them, and you'll create something really special that people will remember. I couldn't remember like the last like I don't even know like I love rap. There are so many rap songs that are hot right now that I don't even know the rapper's name, or I don't even know the song, because I'm just like, it sounds like the same thing that I've heard before. You know what I mean? And people gravitate towards things that sound different or peculiar. That's why you hear these songs that come out and you're like, oh, this sounds weird. This kind of sounds strange. And it becomes the number one song because people are attracted to it, whether they like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like that's how Old Town Road came to be so big because you know, like you've never ever heard of a country trap until, you know, Lil Nas X did that, you know? And it's just like, you know, like what we were saying in the beginning, these artists and producers that's not scared of just trying something risky, just doing it, you know?
Yeah, that is like the perfect example, honestly.
Yeah.
Because people heard that and were like, "Yo, this is weird. This is like definitely a joke." And okay, part of it was definitely satire, but the reason that it blew up was actually not because it was like, oh, this funny little thing. It's because, like you're just saying, it was different. You know what I mean? It was different and it sounded good. So shout out to Lil Nas X. We should definitely follow his lead. His whole persona is so like, he's a funny dude, but he's very creative, and we should all strive to be true to ourselves and as creative as possible, as change everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly right. One last question I want to ask you before we wrap up. What do you think sets you apart from the crowd?
That is like a great question, honestly. Um, Going off the same theme that we've been talking about, I would hope that something that sets me apart from others is that ability to just stop on a dime and then switch everything up. You know what I mean? Um, like, let's take for instance that I put out like two albums and like mad lo-fi singles or whatever. Like 5 years from now, like I was just having this conversation with another producer, but like 5 years from now, I highly doubt I would still be making lo-fi. Kind of like how like now I'm not making hip hop, or rather like Kanye beats or anything like that. It's the ability to accept that growth and not be afraid of it at all. There are so many in the electronic music industry that have stayed on their path, and it's safe, and I get it, and that's your money maker. If you're doing it full time, those are your fans. But I never, ever, ever want to have that feeling again where I'm saying, like this is not it. Like I don't want to be like, my biggest fear is being at like a concert, like my own concert, and playing my music and just not feeling it. You know what I mean? Then I feel like a weird like mascot guy. You know what I mean? That's parading around as Valera. That is definitely my biggest fear. So yeah, I think that definitely helps set me and others apart, is just kind of like being able to change, and really just disrupt, I guess, is how I would put it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on to today's podcast. And, it's nice getting to, share your story and your thoughts and opinions, and share some of your knowledge that you've learned as a producer, to everybody that's listening.
Yeah, dude, thank you so much for having me. This was honestly really fun. It was fun to talk about all this stuff, from music and just like things that apply to, just life in general. Like, this is really great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah, no problem, man. All right, well, where can everyone go follow you?
Yeah. Follow me at Alex Valera on Instagram, and search up Valera on Spotify, and you'll find me. And definitely check out my new EP, Better. I got some new singles coming out too, so be on the lookout. But any kind of updates will be on my IG. So once again, it's at Alex Valera.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much again for coming on, and take care.
Yeah, thank you, man.
So that wraps up today's podcast episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some value. And make sure you go follow Valera, his Spotify, and check out his new EP, Better. So again, thank you for listening, and hope you have a great rest of your day.